I never thought a single day could destroy my world. But that day came, and it came without warning. My name is Margaret Collins, and I used to believe that love could heal anything, until life proved me wrong. I raised my only son Daniel all by myself after his father passed away when Daniel was just 5. We didn't have much, but what we lacked in wealth, we made up for in love. He was a bright, kind boy, the kind of son every mother prays for. Every birthday, he'd promise me, "Mom, one day, I'll make you proud. I'll buy you a big house so you'll never have to worry again." And he did. Years later, Daniel became an engineer, hardworking and honest. When he brought home a girl named Emily, I could see the happiness in his eyes. Emily was young, charming, and full of life. The moment she called me Mom, my heart melted. For the first few months, everything was perfect. We'd cook together, laugh at silly things, and share tea in the garden while waiting for Daniel to return from work. But slowly, things changed. Emily began to complain about small things, my cooking, my habits, even how I folded the laundry. At first, I ignored it. Every relationship has friction, I thought. But her tone grew sharper, her eyes colder. One evening, I overheard her whispering to Daniel, "Your mother treats me like a guest, not a wife." Daniel tried to defend me, but that only made her angrier. And little by little, my son started spending less time with me, not because he wanted to, but because he didn't want another argument. Still, I told myself everything would be fine. But fate had a cruel plan. It was a rainy Thursday. Daniel left for work as usual, smiling and waving at me from his car. That was the last time I saw him alive. The call came 3 hours later, a terrible accident on the highway. My world collapsed in one moment. I dropped to the floor, unable to breathe. Emily screamed and cried, but her tears didn't last long. Within weeks, she changed completely. She stopped eating with me, stopped talking to me, and started locking the bedroom door every night. One day I knocked gently and said, "Emily, I know we're both in pain. But we can face it together, can't we?" She opened the door just enough to glare at me. "There's no we, Margaret. Daniel was my husband, not your property. You've done enough." Those words stabbed deeper than any knife. After that day, she barely looked at me. Then, one morning, she placed a stack of papers on the table. Her voice was cold and emotionless. "Daniel's lawyer came by. Everything he owned belongs to me now. You'll need to move out." I stared at her, my hands trembling. "Emily, please, this is my son's home. Where will I go?" She shrugged. "Not my concern. Pack your things before noon." I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My body felt frozen. I gathered a few clothes and Daniel's photograph, then walked out of the house I had helped him build, the home that was now just bricks and memories. That night, I slept on a church bench, crying until my chest hurt. I whispered to Daniel's photo, "You promised you'd never leave me alone, my boy, and now look where I am." Days turned into weeks. I started working at a small bakery nearby, cleaning tables just to earn enough for food. But every night, I'd hold Daniel's picture close and pray, "God, if there's justice in this world, please show it." And one morning, that prayer was finally heard. The days after Daniel's death stretched endlessly, each one heavier than the last. For me, time had stopped, but for Emily, it seemed to have sped up. She dressed up again, wore her perfume, went out often, and came home late at night. I wanted to believe it was her way of coping, but deep down, something told me Emily was moving on too fast. One evening, I went back to Daniel's house. I just wanted to sit outside, to feel close to him again. The lights were on, and laughter echoed through the windows. My heart raced as I peeked inside. Emily was hosting a dinner party, smiling, drinking wine, surrounded by strangers. The same woman who told me, "I can't live without Daniel," was now laughing as if he had never existed. Tears burned my eyes. I turned away and walked back into the night, my heart aching with betrayal. The following week, I received a letter, an eviction notice. Emily had officially transferred the property under her name and filed for my removal. The house where I raised my son, the garden he planted roses in, the kitchen where I taught him to bake, all of it was gone. I went to the lawyer's office hoping for some mercy, but he said softly, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Collins. The paperwork is clean. There's nothing more I can do." Nothing more he could do. But the universe wasn't done with Emily yet. Weeks passed. I found a small room near the bakery where I worked. The rent was cheap, the walls were cracked, but it was a roof. Every morning I'd walk past Daniel's old street, just to see the house from afar. One day, I saw Emily arguing with a man in a black suit outside. He looked angry. I couldn't hear their words, but I could see Emily's face, pale, shaken, terrified. When the man left, she sat down on the porch, crying. Something inside me whispered, "This isn't over yet." That night, I received a phone call. A calm, male voice said, "Mrs. Collins, my name is Mr. Harris. I'm Daniel's personal lawyer. I believe we need to talk." My breath caught. "But Emily already handled all of Daniel's papers," I said. He paused. "That's exactly why I'm calling. I think you should see what she's been hiding." The next morning, I met him at his office. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a serious tone. He handed me a folder. This was Daniel's original file. Emily brought me a second version after his death, but I always keep backups. "Look here." He showed me Daniel's real will, signed, dated, and stamped. The name written under beneficiary wasn't Emily's. It was mine. My hands shook as I held the papers. "You mean, Daniel left everything to me?" Mr. Harris nodded. "Yes, Mrs. Collins. 2 months before his accident, he changed his will. Emily must have found the older copy and destroyed it to claim the property." The room spun around me. I felt anger, sadness, and disbelief all at once. Can we fix this?" He smiled gently. "Of course. The law protects the truth, even if it takes time to surface. But you'll have to be patient. Emily will soon learn that lies don't last forever." The next few weeks were quiet. Mr. Harris began the legal process to restore my rights. Meanwhile, I continued my humble work, sweeping bakery floors and baking bread like any other day. But every night, when I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel smiling at me, as if saying, "Mom, just hold on a little longer." Then, one evening, I received another call from Mr. Harris. "Mrs. Collins, it's time. The court has reached a decision. Emily must be present tomorrow morning." I thanked him and hung up, tears welling in my eyes. After months of pain, I finally felt hope again. The next day, I arrived at the courthouse early. Emily walked in 10 minutes later, wearing an expensive black dress and her usual smirk. She didn't even glance my way. The judge entered, and Mr. Harris stood tall with his files. As the documents were read aloud, Emily's face changed. Confusion, then panic, then fury. When the judge finally declared the verdict, his words echoed in the silent room. "According to the verified will, the rightful heir of Daniel Collins's estate is his mother, Mrs. Margaret Collins." Emily's mouth opened in disbelief. "That's impossible. He loved me. He promised." The judge interrupted her. "Promises don't override legal truth, Mrs. Emily Collins." She sat down, trembling, unable to speak. I didn't gloat, didn't smile. I simply closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Daniel, you kept your word." Outside the courtroom, Mr. Harris handed me the final document. "It's all yours now, Mrs. Collins." Justice took its time, but it arrived. I smiled faintly. Justice and peace. When I returned to Daniel's house later that day, I stood in the living room, quiet, empty, clean. The house smelled like memories again. I placed Daniel's photo back on the shelf and whispered, "You see, my son. She couldn't destroy what you built. Not your love, not your promise." The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the curtains of my old home. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up to the sound of strangers or the emptiness of a shelter. It was quiet, peacefully quiet. I brewed tea in the same kettle Daniel bought me years ago. As the aroma filled the room, I whispered, "You see, my boy. We're home again." But as I sat there, a strange feeling washed over me. Justice had been served, yet my heart still felt heavy. No amount of money or property could replace Daniel. Still, I knew one thing. God doesn't sleep. And soon, karma would find its way to Emily. Heartbreak. Emily's fall begins. Weeks after the court's verdict, Emily's life began to crumble. The man she had been secretly seeing, the one in the black suit, turned out to be a real estate broker she had borrowed money from. She had promised him payment once she, officially, owned Daniel's assets. But when she lost everything in court, she couldn't repay him. Word spread fast. Her friends disappeared, her reputation shattered, and debt collectors started showing up at her apartment. One afternoon, I was sitting by the window when I saw Emily standing across the street. Her clothes were plain, her hair messy, a shadow of the woman she once was. She didn't notice me at first, but when our eyes met, she froze. For a brief second, I saw guilt in her face. Then she turned and walked away. Candle the letter. A few days later, a letter arrived at my door. The handwriting was shaky, almost unrecognizable. It was from Emily. Margaret, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I had to say this. I was angry. I was broken. When Daniel died, something inside me died too. I thought taking what was his would somehow fill the emptiness, but it only destroyed me. Now I have nothing left. No home, no love, no peace. You were right. Greed brings nothing but pain. I'm leaving this city. Maybe someday, I'll learn to forgive myself. Emily. I read the letter several times. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even joy. But all I felt was sorrow, for both of us. I folded the paper carefully and placed it beside Daniel's photo. She learned her lesson, my boy, I whispered. That's enough. Sunrise, the new beginning. Months passed. I renovated the house. Not fancy, just warm. The garden bloomed again. Daniel's roses grew bright red under the sun. One morning, as I was watering the plants, Mr. Harris, the lawyer, visited me. Mrs. Collins, he smiled. Daniel had also left a small fund in your name, a savings account he never told anyone about. He handed me a checkbook and a note written in Daniel's handwriting, for Mom, for all the days she forgot herself just to make me smile. Tears blurred my vision. I could barely speak. Even from heaven, he still takes care of me, I whispered. Mr. Harris nodded gently. He truly loved you, Mrs. Collins. And now, he can rest knowing you're safe. Dove Karma's last whisper. Years later, I learned that Emily was working at a small diner in another town. People said she lived quietly, spoke to no one, and always carried a small locket with Daniel's picture inside. Maybe that was her way of carrying her guilt. Maybe it was her punishment, or her redemption. Sometimes, when I sit by the window watching the sunset, I think about her. About Daniel, about everything we lost and gained. I realized something then. Life always finds balance. The cruel are taught lessons, and the kind are rewarded. Not always quickly, but always surely. That night, I sat by the fire, holding Daniel's photo, whispering softly, "You were right, my boy. Love never dies, it just finds new ways to protect us." And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not because karma had punished Emily, but because forgiveness had finally found its way into my heart. Letters from heaven. Weeks had passed since the court ruling. Margaret's life had slowly begun to feel like a gentle stream, calm, steady, and healing. Yet, despite the quiet peace, the pain of losing Daniel never left her heart. One rainy afternoon, a small envelope arrived at Margaret's doorstep. It had no return address, only her name written in neat handwriting. Curious, she opened it carefully. Inside, she found a letter with Daniel's handwriting. Her hands shook as she read, "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm no longer there with you. But I want you to know, I've left a few things behind to help you smile again. Always remember, love never ends. It just changes form." Beneath the note was a small key and another envelope, sealed tightly. Key: the hidden treasure. Following the instructions, Margaret unlocked an old wooden box she had never noticed in the attic. Inside were a stack of letters, each dated months before Daniel's death. A small journal filled with personal notes. Photos of Margaret and Daniel from childhood to adulthood. A sealed USB drive labeled, "Mom, play when you need me." Margaret's hands trembled as she held the journal. Each letter was a piece of Daniel's heart, filled with love, gratitude, and even life lessons he wanted her to know. "Mom, always remember, life is stronger than pain. Happiness will come again. Trust the process." Tears streamed down Margaret's face as she realized the depth of Daniel's foresight. Studio microphone. Daniel's voice. That evening, Margaret inserted the USB into her laptop. The screen flickered, and soon Daniel's familiar voice filled the room. "Mom, if you're listening to this, it means you've been strong. I want you to know that every smile you've given me, every hug, every tear you wiped away, has made me who I am. And even though I'm gone, I will always be with you. Love, Daniel." Margaret couldn't speak. She only sat there, listening, crying, laughing, and hugging the photo in her lap. For the first time in months, she felt Daniel's presence in the room, comforting her. Love letter. Emily's reflection. Meanwhile, across the city, Emily's life had become a shadow of her former arrogance. One morning, she found a letter slipped under her door. "You were angry, you were cruel. But karma works in quiet ways. Learn from your mistakes, Emily. Life will teach you, but only if you open your heart." Though she didn't know who sent it, Emily felt a pang of guilt, realizing that Margaret's strength and Daniel's foresight had already changed the course of her own life. Sunrise. Margaret's renewal. Margaret spent the next few weeks reading the letters, listening to the recordings, and even writing back to Daniel as if he could read her words. Her heart healed little by little. She started gardening again, visiting neighbors, and even helping at the bakery where she had worked months ago. She realized, life continues, and love never truly leaves us. The house once filled with sorrow was now a place of warmth, memories, and hope. And Margaret knew, deep in her heart, that Daniel's love had not only protected her, but had also guided her to a future full of light. Life took everything from Margaret, her dreams, her peace, even the smile she once wore so proudly. But through every heartbreak, she learned one truth, that love never really dies, it just lives quietly in the corners of our hearts, waiting to be remembered. Daniel may be gone, but his memories still whisper through the walls of that lonely house, reminding her that